Welcome back to Chapter 8, the Art Center. Young children seem to have a natural affinity for art just as they do for speaking and writing if their environment is full of interesting opportunities. Art, like language, is a means of communication and self-expression for children. It is visual, though, rather than verbal, and involves the elements of line, shape, color, and texture rather than words. So let's look a little bit closer at the Art Center in a self-directed learning environment. So art in the early childhood classroom. Because young children have an inborn drive to communicate, they continually work at the development of this ability in every possible aspect. So if children are given a wide variety of materials, as well as the freedom and the time to discover how these work, they will teach themselves the art skills they need in order to express themselves. It is also a time to remember that children are more interested in the art process rather than the product. If you look at the picture on the screen in front of you, you'll see those children are more about the process of creating the art rather than what it is that they're actually creating, the product that they are creating. And those drawings are coming straight from their minds, okay? It is how they are beginning to understand, and we are beginning to understand as teachers too, that children's drawings actually represent a process for thinking and communicating and are coming straight from their minds. Also, art has a role in education by helping children become more themselves instead of more like everyone else. So the arts can be a medium for this expression if children have access to many materials, the time to explore them, and the respectful encouragement of their exploration. Children, if you see on that picture again in front of you, they splash paint around on their paper, sometimes making a blob, sometimes they make lines or circles. And just as you are about to hang up their finished work, you may cover over the whole paint. They may cover it over with all purple. Like they may just take a color and go over the whole thing. So why do you think they did that? You may wonder. You will need to remember that children splash that paint all around because they are manipulating the medium. Okay, they're not really creating pictures, but instead they're manipulating the paint. They're manipulating the easel. They're trying out the brushes, the colors, the lines, the strokes to see what happens when they use them. So here again, just like we said, the manipulating of the medium and not necessarily the product that they're producing, but the process by which they get there. So let's talk about the development of drawing skills. All children around the world go through a similar sequence in the development of drawing skills. They take on basic shapes first, okay? There's kind of 6 basic shapes in children's early art: rectangle or square, oval or circle, triangle, like a plus sign. The book calls it a Greek cross, the diagonal cross, which looks like an X, and an odd shape, okay? And by ages 3 to 5, children are not only repeating these shapes, but often combining them on top of one another. And you will see the young fella in the picture in front of you. He used some of those shapes and combined some of them together to create his actual work right there. Now let's talk about the first human drawings, and I'm going to change the slide for just a second and show you a picture of kind of what that first human or first person drawing looks like. You may have seen something like that. If you have children of your own, you probably have some of these saved. If you work with preschool children on a daily basis, you've seen these. A lot of times we call it a sun, okay, with the rays coming out, like the lines coming out of the sun, and those kind of become their hair. Their arms come out of their head, their legs come straight out of their head. So they're kind of like stick faces with sun faces with stick arms and legs just coming straight out of their heads. Some children may draw a nose or a mouth as well, but then some don't. And it seems that all children around the world seem to make their very first humans this exact way, with arms and legs directly attached to their heads. Okay, so let's talk about setting up the art center. To help children advance on their own through these levels of manipulation and mastery and meaning, you can set up the art center of the classroom so that the children can choose and use it easily. You need to have at least one, preferably two, easels available at all times. Easels are probably are among some of the most usable, important items that you can place in the art center. Also, you know, easels come in all shapes, they come in all sizes, they can hang their papers on them. They have that shelf, if you'll notice there, where they can put their paint. So it's a wonderful way for them to put their paper up and use as a means of painting. Also, materials that are included in your art center. You want to make sure that you have access to water in the art center. And if you look on page 169 of your textbook, there's just tons and tons of materials that you can place in there, from paints to finger paints to tempera paints to colored pencils, colored chalk, chalkboards, pipe cleaners, scissors, glue, pom-poms, feathers, rolling pins, clay or Play-Doh, mixing jars, the painting aprons or smocks. The list just goes on and on. So you want to make sure that you check that list out, like I said, on page 169. So let's talk a little bit about promoting small motor development in the writing area, in the art area. Tearing construction paper, folding and cutting paper, squeezing paint out of plastic bottles, using those scissors. Those are all activities that some people just kind of take for granted, like, oh, we just do those, but they also enhance that small motor development. All right, so for cognitive development, let's talk first a little bit about this, color. Children love colors, so your classroom should be very colorful. The concept of color is a cognitive development that occurs in children as early as 4 to 6 months of age. So in order for your children to recognize and learn different colors, children need to be immersed in one color at a time, okay? We want to make sure that they're able to put into words and visual imagery of that particular color. So that's why we just want to do one color at a time and immerse them. And when we say immerse them in a color, what we mean is have them, okay, let's just take, for instance, maybe we do red first, okay? So we ask the children to bring a red object to class. We bring something red. We share these red items, okay? We put red paint in the easel jars at the art center, okay? We put out red Lego bricks, like in the manipulative center. We may put out some red toy fire engines in the block center. We may read the book, This is a Firefighter, in our circle time or in our book center, and ask them to find the equipment in that book that is red. In our writing center, we may have red paper or red writing pens or pencils, markers. That's called immersing, okay? Then we turn around, we do the same thing with green. We do the same thing with blue, okay? Mixing colors is another great way in cognitive development. Once we've introduced those primary colors one by one, you will want them to experiment with mixing paint colors to make new colors, okay? So we may start out with something like yellow and blue and let them experiment to see what happens, because that you know, easily turns to green, and it's a pretty good one to start out with. Mixing various paints together is a wonderful way for your children to experiment with colors. We can use food coloring. We could use colored cellophane, you know, like saran wrap. and then also in and also use finger paints. Okay. Emotional development. We don't think too much about art as being emotional development, but you can use water play, which is also a soothing activity, and Play-Doh, you know, as you're squeezing and you're manipulating Play-Doh, that kind of kneading it, rolling it, pressing it, serves as an emotional development. But in order for Play-Doh to use Play-Doh as an art activity, it kind of, we take it when they may be manipulating and rolling and doing that, but as long as they mold the Play-Doh into shapes, then it becomes part of what we can do through art. Okay, so I hope that gives you a little insight into the Art Center and a self-directed learning classroom, and I hope you will join me next week for Chapter 9.